Our reading today comes from Luke 24, verses 1 through 8. On the first day of the week, very early in the morning, the women took the spices they had prepared and went to the tomb. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb. But when they entered, they did not find the body of the Lord Jesus. While they were wondering about this, suddenly two men in clothes that had gleamed like the light stood beside them. In their fright, the women bowed down with their faces to the ground. But the men said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here. He has risen. Remember how he told you while he was still with you in Galilee? The Son of Man must be delivered over to the hands of the sinners, be crucified, and on the third day be raised again." Then they remembered his words. These are the words of God, and may he bless our reading and understanding of them.
I like that line from our reading today. Why do you look for him among the dead? He is risen. He's a living God. And I think in a way that's what we tend to do in our lives. We don't realize we're looking for God among the dead. But we tend to be caught up in our ruminating thought. We tend to be in some type of mode of trauma, I think. I think a lot of us carry the pain from our past, the hurt of a father, perhaps, of parents, society, schools. I mean, the list goes on and on. It can be friends. And indeed, many of the things I think are somewhat traumatic, we're used to. It's social. Indeed, we learn from the young ones today, the young folk, that a lot of the ways we've talked in the past weren't very constructive for some people. We didn't always hold healthy space for people. There are the obvious examples, of course, where the West literally enacted genocide against peoples. And then there's some less obvious spaces where it could be we didn't hold space for LGBTQIA folks or many different people. Even, I think, each of us, no matter our identities, no matter our histories, have felt somewhat isolated at times, somewhat a stranger and put down, set upon perhaps. And I think it's easy to carry those traumas forward. We start to build a defensive shell. It's in our heads. And sometimes we don't notice it until we get too angry at something we shouldn't be angry about. Just someone's presence, someone reminds us of someone. We don't even know what they remind us of. Or they say something that just ticks us up. It's that overreaction, whether it's external or not. I think it's a good indicator of some of the trauma we carry, some of the pain. Interestingly enough, I think the scriptures from Christ's teachings about prayer and meditation, contemplation and presence, to other traditions' teachings like we see in Buddhism, Hinduism, about bringing presence, bringing light onto a situation is exactly what we often need to heal those wounds, even if we can't analyze every one. Some of them started when we were 2. You know, it's hard to know exactly all the impacts things have on us. Sometimes it's something perfectly lovely and we just feel a certain way about it. And I think that presence, that meditative presence, we can bring in every moment. It doesn't take us going into the garden alone. It can be here together. It can be at work. But we can come to that meditative presence at any moment. And I think it's a healing salt for a number of reasons. One being, as Christ taught, that presence has a natural compassion in it. It has a love for others as ourselves. Because when we're present to the moment, we're not analyzing anymore. When we're analyzing, it's calling back memories and histories. It's remembering our dividedness. We think we are our bodies, or at least the brain in our bodies. And they're someone else, and I'm going to treat them little bit differently than I treat myself, or maybe exactly the same, and that's the problem. But realizing that we're one in presence is less about telling myself, okay, we are one, although that's a good reminder, as God told us to remember. But I think in presence, we just know it. We're less fearful of others because we're there. We naturally are in touch with the intrinsic spirit of God within, connected directly to God according to our scriptures, our mystics, our teachers. And so we're fearless. We know in the present moment we can never lose it. The present moment, that is. Everything else can pass. Bodies, environments, earths can indeed pass. And so presence has this compassion that comes when we realize just naturally, without trying, that we're one with everything we perceive. And I think that helps with our traumas in other ways as well, because often we're running from those hard feelings, Someone told us we shouldn't feel that way, we shouldn't be angry, so we never feel anger. It's just it might come out in these other ways. Or we shouldn't do this or that or feel this or that. There wasn't space for that when we were a kid. It happens in friend groups, all of us, we do it to each other in different ways. And so being present to those feelings as they might come up. You say, well, maybe I'm not in touch with my anger. I think actually helps to dissipate it, helps them to heal and to maybe find renewed energy in them in a way, transform them into something positive versus hiding away from them, or running from them, or fighting them. Indeed, I think there are studies that show meditation is actually a very powerful pain reliever. And we also know meditation is very helpful when it comes to symptoms of depression and stress, anxiety. And so funny enough, that call to be awake that Christ talks about, to engage with people with a compassionate lens, letting go of our histories, all those things we bring into our minds, kind of bogged down by them, we get caught up in them, about people, about ourselves. Just letting that be, it'll be in our minds in its own way. But being more present to the moment helps to heal, to solve, SALVE, those wounds, to help them teach what they have to teach. Indeed, that's what our sermon is entitled, Post-Traumatic Growth. And actually, it's a term M used in a walk we had with M and Ellie on, I think it was Wednesday. And I just loved it because it speaks to the healing power of trauma. It's funny because we talk about post-traumatic stress disorder. And many of us have some type of PTSD, even if we wouldn't label it that, as we've talked about. But it's often that trauma or that pain in our spirit, that thing we sometimes identify with. Well, that's me. I'm always a little irked. I'm always a little anxious. When we start to notice it and not identify as much with it, that's there. We can heal from it and grow in ways sometimes beyond imagination. Like if we look at our world, we see this trauma around us, even if it's hard to quantify. We know that, mowed lawns aren't exactly the healthiest thing for our planet. It's something we all do. We all have it. What else is there to do now? But it takes that engagement to say, okay, maybe this person who has a suggestion around permaculture or walnut guild, maybe we should listen to him a little bit. Maybe I'll garden a little more. Maybe I'll add some other seeds next year. Maybe I'll empower those who think creatively in these ways. Who knows what it is? But that presence, I think, can heal our earth as well. Our earth is kind of a good picture of ourselves today. Whether we know it or not, suffering from so much transformation for somewhat selfish purposes, egotistical purposes, things that don't look too far out into the future. And I think it takes presence to heal that as well, to be present with our natural environment. It takes presence with ourselves as well. And so in a way, the opportunity today is global for our own sakes, for the sakes of our children and grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren, to be present enough so that we can heal ourselves and create healthier space, more light for our families, our friends, and for our earth as well. And I think if we do that, the future will surprise us. There's one more example I want to mention, and that's of Christ and his death and resurrection. I can't think of a more potent symbol of post-traumatic growth. I mean, quite literally, very traumatic. And we see in his resurrection, his glorified self. It doesn't matter what we believe about the history of Christ. Maybe it's made up or something, at least that part. We tell ourselves, who knows? We may have a visceral knowledge of it and believe it to be very true. But that symbol, why is it so important? That Christ was present unto death, to God's will, and to those around him. He was there, engaging, not always answering the questions they asked because they were trapping him, but always present, hoping for the relief of the suffering around him, praying for those murdering him, because how could it be through anything else besides ignorance, our sleepfulness, that brings us to a place of torturing and killing those around us? Even when we have the best of excuses, we like excuses. And we see what happens afterwards, his glorified resurrection, his living testimony of the power of God to renew the dead, to renew us. It's a promise to renew us. We don't have to be hard on ourselves. We don't have to say, well, I've been so asleep. There's a place for that. We may feel bad about something we've done, motive we've had. That means we're waking up a little bit. But I think it's letting go of even that guilt. Because maybe we've had it since we did it. It's not always a marker of waking up. The presence for ourselves, for the sake of others, and for our world. So let's take a moment, closing our eyes if we feel so called, but allowing our environment, what we see, what we feel and hear, to settle our minds, noticing that our habitual thinking is kind of like the clouds. You can't really beat them away, but you don't have to follow them around. Noting that if the scriptures are right, from Buddhism to Christianity, we are empowered by infinity, by the substance of all things, by divinity and intrinsic awareness, as a Buddhist master might put it, loving wisdom, as Swedenborg might. The compassionate light of presence, rooted in God. So we're more powerful than we could imagine. But the greatest healing is to be had in our minds, where we perceive all this earth. Everything is an expression of our own minds. It can't exist there otherwise. That's how we know things. And allowing the light of healing from God to further into.
Lord, I'm troubled and feeling trapped. Lord, I'm troubled and feeling trapped. I lost myself in someone else. Don't know if she's coming back. Lord, I'm lost. My heart is turning a page. Lord, I'm lost. My heart is turning a page. I long for the hands of another man. I think about it night and day. Lord, I must be crazy. Lord, I must be crazy. Tell me it's not too late to save me. Tell me it's not too late to save me. Lord, I'm guilty, broke his heart in two. Lord, I'm guilty, broke his heart in two. Made him cry, left him dry. What was I supposed to do? Lord, my love, wants to seek revenge. Lord, my love, wants to seek revenge. He'll chop me up, put me in a box, and mail my little body to France.